So I'll get started, and a few people might add slowly. I wanted to include these two poems because I was mentioning last time that Emily Dickinson's poems, only 10 of them were published during her lifetime. There were 1,775 of them altogether discovered after she died in a chest in her room, sewn into little booklets called fascicles. And her estate got busy publishing. She became popular, but she became popular in highly edited versions of her poetry. By edited, I mean much less eccentric. So I wanted to start just with an
Oh,
example of one as she wrote it, and then one as Mabel Loomis Todd, who was her brother Austin's lover, and Thomas Wentworth Higginson, who was, as you know, her friend and sort of mentor. Published in the 1891 edition of Dickinson's poems. So this is a very early edition, brought out only 5 years after her death. So here it is in her version. I like to see it lap the miles and lick the valleys up and stop to feed itself at tanks and then prodigious step around a pile of mountains and supercilious peer in shanties by the sides of roads and then a quarry pair to fit its sides and crawl between, complaining all the while in horrid hooting stanza, then chase itself downhill and neigh like Boanerges, then prompter than a star, stop docile and omnipotent at its own stable door. So, Tony, can you scroll down just a little bit? Here is the edited version, and you notice that they've given it a title, which makes it look like it comes from a children's book. The Railway Train. I mean, I'm like, gag me with a spoon, you know?
Could be.
yes.
Yeah. And then look at what they've done with the quote, normalizing or conventionalizing the capital letters, the punctuation. The wording is pretty similar. Um, but here we go. I like to see it lap the miles and lick the valleys up and stop to feed itself at tanks. Semicolon. Semicolons are rarely used in poetry because they're such a formal academic form of punctuation. And then prodigious step around a pile of mountains and supercilious peer in shanties by the sides of roads. Semicolon. And then a quarry pair to fit its sides and crawl between, complaining all the while in horrid hooting stanzas, semicolon, then chase itself downhill and neigh like Boanerges, semicolon, then punctual as a star, stop docile and omnipotent at its own stable door. This certainly, quote, corrects her mistakes. It takes away, I think, much of the flavor of the dish. It turns it into a conventional kind of poetry about a railway train, do you know? And there are some good images and so on, but I think it's just really taken the freshness away. And those semicolons are, um, to me, really offensive, you know? Anybody have any quick comments on this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, what is
Oh, and
Boanerges?
Urges,
Yeah.
Peter?
Um, Jesus referred to James and John, who were brothers, the sons of a man named Zebedee, as the sons of Boanerges, which is the sons of thunder, basically.
Yeah.
It was a nickname, I imagine, drawn from the Greek. I don't really know what its origin was, but that's what it was.
Yeah.
Boanerges means the sons of thunder.
So neigh like thunder, you know. So
Now,
this horse has a thunderous neigh because it's a
o-
train.
okay, the my general question is they probably I have to imagine they thought they were helping.
They
They
did.
they thought they were improving things. But then the audacity, I can't quite imagine if they thought it was good enough to publish and promote, I suppose, and then to go in and change it like they knew better than the original author.
Yeah,
It's it's
absolutely.
it's awfully bold, isn't it?
I think so. There was an idea that Emily Dickinson was sort of a poor, half-cracked spinster writing poems in her lonely room, and obviously they saw something really remarkable in these poems, but they sort of thought, oh, she didn't know how to do it right. You know what I mean? And you're absolutely right. It's unforgivable to do that, in my opinion, to a poet who makes her own or his own decisions very deliberately about how to punctuate, how to capitalize, how to do line breaks, how to rhyme, you know. By the way, notice that there are some interesting line breaks. Up with step, peer with pair, while with hill, star with door. Those are what I was talking about when I was talking about off rhymes or slant rhymes. They don't quite rhyme. And later, either today or next time, we'll look at a poem where that off rhyme is really all important to the meaning of the poem.
And
Leslie,
did you say it was her brother who did
no,
this?
no, no, her brother's lover, Maple Loomis Todd. Maple Loomis Todd was married to an astronomer who was hired by Amherst College, but Mabel Loomis Todd fell in love with Emily Dickinson's brother Austin and had a hot and heavy affair with him for years, which Emily and her sister Lavinia aided and abetted. But Mabel was a little bit of a wannabe. She was starstruck by Emily Dickinson. I don't think she ever actually met her, you know, but she was really impressed by this luminous presence who lived next door, this very eccentric presence who lived next door.
And
Let's
can you think of another instance like this where somebody has gone in and edited a poem? I mean,
change.
of course, novelists and other writers have editors, and if there was mistakes like misspellings or so forth. But can you think of another
Yeah,
situation like this?
Shakespeare's punctuation and spelling are regularly modernized in very good editions like the Yale Shakespeare. And you can get editions where they're not modernized. Sometimes, if you look at them, they're really pretty hard to read, like a facsimile of the first folio, and the quartos are even stranger. So it's not unusual for that to be done with a long dead author when punctuation
Yeah.
conventions have changed. In this case, I agree completely with Anne that it was wrong of them to do it. But I have to say, I'm not terribly bothered by anything except the title, The Railway Train, which I can see why they put it in because they want readers to know immediately what is being talked
Yeah.
about. I am bothered when they change words, which they sometimes
Yeah.
did. That makes me angry. But this it seems like a minor annoyance, though I much prefer the original version.
Well, I got to tell a more egregious example is the 18th century was a Nahum Tate who changed the end of King Lear so that King Lear lives and Cordelia lives.
And for about 160 years, nobody acted the original version because people preferred the happy ending.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
And
I
William
know.
Charles Macready, around 1832, restored,
Yeah,
a shortened version of the very long original text of King Lear and had
yeah,
Lear die and
yeah.
Cordelia die.
It's pretty
Well,
shocking.
well, actually, now I'm remembering Nietzsche's sister edited all his stuff and to
Yeah,
make him
Well,
seem more like a racist Nazi.
she did that with the Will to Power, which was only notes when she got a hold of it. But his actual published works, I think she couldn't really do that with. She just reinterpreted them and
we need to move
welcomed
on.
Hitler and so on.
Yeah, we need to move on if that's okay. So
Yeah.
I want you to scroll down to the poem. I heard a fly buzz when I died, which is really one of her absolute greatest poems and very strange.
And
Notice,
Douglas had his hand up. Uh,
oh, who had your hand up? I can't see everybody.
Douglas had
Oh,
his hand
sorry.
up.
Yeah, okay. See, I can't see everybody. Douglas, take it away. What is
So
it?
on mine, on the third stanza, it says to fit its ribs instead of to fit its sides.
Okay.
And I'm using the Johnson.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
other, yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be different variations. Because you see also Emily Dickinson sometimes had different versions of her poetry, you
Right.
know. And so scholars are still spending time trying to decide what's the most definitive, what the dates are. And, with even the pretty trustworthy editions, Johnson, and then after him, Franklin, there's still some sources of disagreement between Johnson and then Franklin. And I was using Johnson, but Franklin is apparently like the final word, the very Rome edition. Let's move on to I heard a fly buzz when I died, and I'm sorry that I can't see everybody at the same time, so I can't. So if you want to say something, just make noise.
Yeah,
Okay.
make noise. I'm sorry, Ann, but that's what they do. If I'm
Yeah, I know.
sharing, I don't get everybody.
Oh, I know.
Do you guys have the little arrow though you've got a strip of people's faces on the right
Uh-huh.
and a little arrow
Yeah.
that is
Move
down.
it up or down.
Yeah,
You
sure.
can quickly just flip between the two
Sure.
sets.
Okay. I heard a fly buzz when I died. The stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of storm. The eyes around had wrung them dry, and breaths were gathering firm for that last onset when the king be witnessed in the room. I willed my keepsakes, signed away what portions of me be assignable. And then it was there interposed a fly with blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz between the light and me. And then the windows failed, and then I could not see to see. So I was talking last time about two different things. One, the idea that Dickinson's poems are always an attempt to think through something or to feel through something. They don't have it all figured out ahead of time. They're very much poems of process, poems of, thought and feeling and struggle in a way. And I think this is one that really enacts that. And then I mentioned last time that Dickinson is a deeply religious poet, raised in a very strict Calvinist tradition among a strictly believing Calvinist family and in a strictly believing Calvinist town, but that she herself never, ever just easily adopts any belief or any faith. So it's true. I think she's perched not just on, a fence, but she's perched on a razor of like on the one hand this, on the other hand this, the kind of the razor's edge of belief and questioning. And this is a really great poem that enacts that struggle. So notice the first thing that we notice is who's the speaker? Well, the speaker is somebody who's dead. And that's not your normal speaker. That does exist sometimes, you know, I heard a fly buzz when I died. And you're like, whoa, that is an audacious way to begin a poem. It's not she heard a fly buzz when she died. It's I myself. So speaking from beyond death, telling this quote experience that happened to this dying narrator. The stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of storm. And you think about how the way a storm will like, rise up and then abate. And there's a great stillness and then rise up. And so obviously she's enacting a kind of death struggle, but a waiting in between these heaves of storm. The eyes around had wrung them dry. And we remember that in the 19th century, people died in their own bed, and relatives gathered around the bed, right? And so everybody's watching this process. And then there's something else that my mom told me. She said when her grandmother died, I think it was, as her grandmother was dying, she saw those waiting for her across the shore. So that's a very prevalent 19th century belief, or maybe older belief as well, that you're going to have some kind of final vision at the moment of your death. And people who watch you die have access to that if you say anything, you know? So apparently a grandmother said something like, oh, hello, darling, something like that. Okay. So that's what's going on here. Breaths were gathering firm for that last onset when the king be witnessed in the room. So it's as if when she dies, the moment she dies, God is going to be present in the room. Not Elvis living in the South. I always think of Elvis as the king. God is going to be witnessed in the room. I willed my keepsakes. I always have to explain to my students, or had to, what that means. Like, oh, you get the cameo brooch, you get the lace dress, you get the pen, like that signed away. And this great phrase, what portions of me be assignable? It's like, well, not everything about you can be assigned, just your physical possessions. And then it was interposed, amazing verb choice, to position itself in between what and what, in between the dying person and that hoped for vision. Interposed a fly. And now I know Leslie's really good at pointing out the sound patterns of things with blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz, And you think about a fly, like a big old fat housefly that's kind of like, between the light and me. So literally, the fly is going to the window because that's what flies do. They want to get out. And then the windows failed. Which windows? Well, that is very metaphorical, right? It means, I can't see any longer. The eyes are windows of the soul in Renaissance poetry. And then the windows failed. And then I could not see to see. So what's happened here is what? The whole, I'm going to be a little bit flippant and say the whole game plan fell apart. This death scene, this imagined death scene, when there's going to be some passage into some final truth, and those who witness this death are going to be able to see that and see the king and see this, kind of glorious transcendent moment. It just falls apart. Now, is the fly, we can be, I would say, kind of overly metaphorical and say the fly is Beelzebub, making his appearance, or is it just a fly? A materialistic material fly. Yes, Leslie, you're mute.
Yep. I was just thinking about that fly and how flies have such a short lifespan. They're sort of like and people don't have very positive associations with them. They're dirty.
Yeah,
And this is I like the fact that it has this blue
yeah,
certain buzz and the light isn't capitalized. But
right,
you were familiar with Quaker traditions of the light,
right,
Mhm.
you would
right,
be talking about this final knowledge,
right.
this vision of God, this understanding that you're waiting to happen, and not being able to see is metaphorically there is no light.
Yeah. Well, there might not be, at least in this poem, you can't see it, you know? And so the dead, and you think about too, flies come from maggots, bodies turn to maggots. Do you know? There's that whole bringing it down, literally, like to the rough earth, of life and death. I mean, this is an amazing, amazing poem. And to catch it, to cast it in the voice of somebody who already went through this process and yet is alive to tell the tale. Other comments about this poem? I'll scroll down and scroll up and see if anybody wants to shout out.
I have something. So, Anne, I was struck by the juxtaposition between the king in the second stanza and the fly. It's
Yeah,
like you go from this omnipotent idea of God, and then it's a little, a little insignificant fly who actually, appears to make the final transition from
yeah,
life to death. I thought that was interesting.
yeah, absolutely. So it's equivocal. I could not see to see. It's like there might be something to see, but I can't see it, at least in this poem, you know? Let's scroll down more to there's a certain slant of light, which is also, I think, one of her greatest, greatest poems. Tony. Tony,
Yeah.
can you scroll down to,
Oh, you're
there's a,
not seeing that?
no, we're still on, I heard a fly buzz.
That's odd.
I can't go. I don't control it.
Okay.
Because I scrolled. Let me see if this does it.
There you go. Now we're
It
scrolling.
Okay,
worked.
okay. I
Keep
don't.
going.
I'm not sure why that happened, but let's see.
Yeah. So,
This,
okay, that's it. Yeah, this is it.
okay, good.
Yeah. So, this always reminds me of Ingmar Bergman. Just always reminds me of him because of his movie Winter Light. But also, my students would never realize that you have to imagine a northern climate, a northern latitude to get this poem. Because down here, the sun doesn't sink very low in the winter. But imagine her living in Massachusetts when the sun gets really low to the horizon in the winter. There's a certain slant of light, winter afternoons, that oppresses like the heft of cathedral tunes. Heavenly hurt it gives us. We can find no scar but internal difference where the meanings are. None may teach it, any. 'Tis the seal, despair, an imperial affliction sent us of the air. When it comes, the landscape listens. Shadows hold their breath. When it goes, 'tis like the distance on the face, on the look of death, or some versions say on the face of death. It's an amazing poem. So imagine, so when you were little, when I was little, I imagined I would look at a shaft of light, coming down through the clouds. And I would always imagine that that was like, you know, a shaft of light sent down from God, or in that phrase, stairway to heaven, you know. I would always imagine that like God was zapping the earth with his finger, except that I would imagine that that was like a really cool thing. But what she's seeing here is this bleak, bleak winter afternoon and a low shaft of light, right? And she's imagining that it's a message, a heavenly hurt, because she's doing what the Puritans did, which is read signs into the physical landscape, read signs of God's presence or God's absence or God's messages into the physical landscape. It oppresses like the heft of cathedral tunes. So imagine, being in a cathedral and the organ, has this first chord sort of like, like that, this huge, oppressive, heavy chord ringing out. Now, as far as I know, Emily Dickinson was never in a cathedral, but she's imagining this, not just like a piano or something, but this big, heavy weighing down of the first chord. Heavenly hurt it gives us. We can find no scar, but internal difference where the meanings are. It was such a beautiful, beautiful poem. It's like our bodies aren't hurt, but inside we're wounded. And that's where the meanings are. Now, this very, very oblique next stanza, none may teach it any. 'Tis the sealed despair. None may teach it any. Does that mean no one may teach anything about it to anybody? Or none may teach it? Or is any just an intensification of the word none, not anyone? In any case, it's a great line. It's a strange line, and I think it's impossible to find just one way of interpreting it. 'Tis the seal, despair. An imperial affliction sent us of the air. So far, things are looking pretty grim, There's this message of despair coming down through this shaft of light that wounds us internally. When it comes, the landscape listens. Shadows hold their breath. When it goes, 'tis like the distance on the look of death. That's even more bleak, you know? Because at least when we feel this internal difference, this heavenly hurt, we're still alive. We're still, in her case, writing. We're still feeling. We're still thinking. The landscape is still around us. When it goes just like the distance on the look of death, we look at a dead person's face. Where is that? Just absolutely nowhere, you know? So as I say, I think it's a really, really beautiful, beautiful poem. And notice here, the rhymes are afternoons, tunes, scar, are, despair, air, breath, death. But also the off rhymes, light, heft, and then gives us difference. That's a very extreme off rhyme. None may teach it any affliction just doesn't rhyme. Listens, distance. So she's using, I think, a really sophisticated and beautiful pattern of true rhyme, which tends to kind of shut a door on something. Breath, death. You shut the door on breath when you come to death, but also off rhymes that keep tension going in the poem, that keep us moving through the poem. So I don't know if anybody wants to talk about this poem at all.
I thought it was really powerful and beautiful. My question to you is, why do you think she capitalizes slant but not light?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, except that light, as Leslie was saying, I mean, it's not only Quakerisms, it's like I think of the South, I see the light, I see the beautiful light, Jesus, the light of the world. I think she wants to naturalize that light and not make us think of God. It's a slant of light, but it's natural light. It's the sun's ray. It's not God. We read that God into it. She reads that God into it, but she doesn't want us to get there too easily. Does that make sense?
For me, part of the power of that word slant is that it's a winter afternoon. The sun is unusually low in the sky,
Yeah, absolutely.
not overhead. It's a real visual reminder that this is the depth of winter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Meredith, yes?
I find it really odd that she talks of what you might hear in a cathedral as a tune. Tunes seems to me refers to popular music
Yeah.
generally, and that struck me as odd. Cathedral tunes, but really, I was just asking. I was more puzzled by where she put the capitalizations and where she didn't put them. Like none may teach it any. And they already you're sort of reeling. Tis the seal despair. Okay, despair is a capital D. And imperial affliction, and neither imperial nor affliction is capitalized, and then sent us of the air capitalized again. Is she just randomly capitalizing things? I mean, why would you capitalize air and not affliction?
Well, I cannot tell you.
Well, I don't know why not, Anne.
Next time I'm talking to Emily, I'll ask her, I'll say, what is the capitalist? Yeah, Leslie, just Leslie.
Not always, but a lot of the time she's capitalizing words like heft, heavenly, hurt that are alliterative.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think it's just sort of a surprise. It's not like affliction, which we might expect, sort of the Germanic, this is a noun, we're going to capitalize it, or, in some
Uh-huh.
older English things where anything that's an abstract, you capitalize it. It's more of a pay attention to this word.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. And Peter?
Leslie basically made the same point I was going to make, but better. That she doesn't capitalize where you expect a formal phrase to be capitalized, but where she feels the need for some kind of emphasis.
Yeah.
I mean, it's anybody's guess in a particular case,
Yeah.
but I think that's her practice. And it's not that different from the Elizabethan practice of capitalization, which seems very random and is sometimes just a matter of what the typesetter chose to do. But sometimes the capitalization really conveys something.
Yeah.
Do you think that it was like what we might put in italics? In other words, if you were reading this aloud, would you say there's a certain slant of life? Winter afternoons. You know, you would emphasize the capitalized words. You think it's something like that?
Um,
I think it's
I
less
think you
audio
slow
than that.
down. I think you slow down for it, but I wouldn't say there's a certain slant of light. I'd just say there's a certain slant of light,
Yeah,
because it's
me
it's
too.
metrical. There's a certain slant of light, winter afternoons, you know. Um, but yeah, it makes you slow down. It makes you pay attention to the word. Um, and it's just words that she wants you to pay attention to. And I think tunes, I would guess that tunes is there because it rhymes with afternoons.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. What else is she going to say? Winter afternoons that oppresses like the heft of cathedral hymns, you could say. But I mean, I don't know.
It
I don't know.
also suggests she's not quite as impressed by the cathedral music as, an Anglican or a Catholic might be. I mean, it's not contemptuous or anything, but there's a casual
Right.
element to it.
Yeah. Let's move ahead a little bit to I Know That He Exists, which is a pretty straightforward poem. But it kind of encapsulates her religious stance. I know that he exists somewhere in silence. He has hid his rare life from our gross eyes. 'Tis an instant's play, 'tis a fond ambush, just to make bliss earn her own surprise. But should the play prove piercing earnest, should the glee glaze in death's stiff stare, would not the fun look too expensive? Would not the jest have crawled too far? It's a great little poem. It's pretty straightforward. Notice that there is a period after the line, I know that he exists. This is very rare in her poetry. A period is a full stop. It makes a declarative statement. No more to be said about it. By line two, the whole thing is starting to crumple. Somewhere in silence, I know that he exists. Somewhere in silence, he has hid his rare life from our gross eyes. Gross in the meaning of lowly, fleshly, his rare life in the meaning of, like something that has been rarefied um, through what's the word I want? Alchemy, like the pure form of something. Tis an instant's play. Oh, he's just joking with us. Tis an instant's play. 'Tis a fond ambush. He's going to leap out and say, yes, here I am. Here I am. As at the end, what they're expecting is going to happen with I heard a fly buzz when I died. Just to make bliss earn her own surprise. Why he withholds himself from us? Because why? We need to earn the right. And then we'll really be in bliss. But, dash, should the play prove piercing earnest? Now look at how she slows sounds down with the next two lines. Should the glee glaze in death's stiff stare? Monosyllabic words. And it's hard, you can't say glee glaze fast. Should the glee glaze? First we're in glee, and then glaze is over. In death's stiff stare. Would not the fun look too expensive? Would not the jest have crawled too far?
Hmm.
Which is to say, what? There's a great story by Catherine Ann Porter, The Jilting of Granny Weatherall, when Granny Weatherall dies and still the bridegroom has not showed up at the altar. The first time it was a man, second time it's God. And this is kind of similar to that. What if the whole thing was God's trick, but he forgot to show up at all? Wouldn't that be too cruel to be believed? You know? So I love that poem because it's a poem that's really pressing its way through. It's like the lines are short, it's pretty declarative, it's pretty easy to follow, but she's following a thought process of devolution, of questioning, of turning the thing over and over and becoming more and more incisive and I would say kind of angry by the end of it. Let's get away from these poems
Hey,
for
one comment, and I would
yes,
make,
go ahead.
I,
Sure.
I like this poem a lot. It really feels like she's toying with ideas here, and just kind of speculating about things,
Yeah,
and this ambivalence, particularly about God and about death. Maybe it's just lurking in the corners and will jump out to surprise us, but wouldn't. But maybe that surprise would be going too far,
yeah,
vis-a-vis the real heavy part of it. And it seems to be, there's an ambivalence toward mortality that is very clear in this poem for me.
absolutely. Tony, could you please scroll upward until we get to a loss of something ever felt I, which I really love. This is it. This is a little self-portrait, and I think it's so touching. It's also a religious poem, but it to me it really characterizes who this little person was, even as a child. It's so moving to me. A loss of something ever felt I, the first that I could recollect, bereft I was, of what I knew not. Too young that any should suspect, a mourner walked among the children. I, notwithstanding, went about as one bemoaning a dominion, itself the only prince cast out. Elder today, a session wiser, and fainter too, as wiseness is. I find myself still softly searching for my delinquent palaces, and a suspicion, like a finger, touches my forehead now and then that I am looking oppositely for the sight of the kingdom of heaven.
Mm.
I mean, this poem just breaks my heart. You can imagine her as a little child on a playground, a little child among other children, this future world great poet who already feels this sense of bereftness, a loss of something ever felt I. Most little kids don't feel that, at least in a kind of existential or spiritual way, it seems to me, you know? And then this questioning, bereft I was of what I knew not. What is it that I'm bereft of? It's not that I want a transistor radio or that, you know, my sister stole my money. It's not that. It's like, it's what is it? What is it? A mourner walked among the children. I went about as one bemoaning a dominion. What is that dominion? And then a notice itself is a neuter and prince. So this isn't just like the little girl, this is the being, you know, the female who's an it, who's a prince. Itself the only prince cast out. And then very touching lines, elder today, a session wiser and fainter too, as wiseness is. I find myself still softly searching for my delinquent palaces. Where are those palaces? When are they going to show up? And a suspicion like a finger touches my forehead now and then. Great word oppositely. Does she mean she's looking toward the created world for the kingdom of heaven? Or does she mean she's looking toward the supposed kingdom of heaven for the kingdom of heaven, whereas it might be someplace else, i.e., the created world? What does she mean? It just ends in this huge question, you know? But as I said, to me, this is a rare poem where we get a sense of a kind of autobiographical sense. And it's a kind of gentler poem than many of her poems. Um, a kind of summation of something that has existed ever since she was a child. Any questions or comments about this one?
I'm very curious about that word oppositely.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Opposite of what?
exactly,
Uh,
exactly.
Opposite of looking upward toward heaven. She's looking down in the
I think
ordinary.
she's
In the
afraid
wrong
she's looking
place.
at all the wrong places.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. That's the question. That's the question. She suspects that she's looking oppositely, but what does that mean oppositely? If she answered it, it would be so much less good a poem. No, no, seriously, because it opens us to wonder, what is that? Is it like she should be looking up toward heaven, or she should be looking down toward earth? She should be looking within. Where is it? Well, it's not something that has an answer in
Well,
terms of this poem.
it's also like the famous Hindu phrase, neti, neti, not this, not this.
Yeah,
Wherever she looks, it isn't what she doesn't find what she's looking for, so it must be somewhere else.
yeah,
I think oppositely suggests that too.
yeah. But she doesn't say there is no kingdom of heaven.
No.
She doesn't say that. You see, to me, that's what's so great about her poems is that they are full of experiences and questions. And she doesn't feel that the job of a poem is to tie everything up for her or our consumption.
Well, for the idea of faith doesn't include the idea of experiencing heaven. It includes having faith in heaven.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Isn't there a phrase, the kingdom of heaven comes not by observation?
That's interesting. That's interesting. And yet, even without observing within herself, she's still been feeling this, loss of something or this heavenly hurt. So it's not just that her eyes could be directed wrongly, it's that somehow how she is created, she's created in terms of this primeval loss of something.
I'm noticing. Oh, go ahead, Leslie.
No, you go ahead, Ellen.
I'm noticing a real difference in the punctuation between this poem and the previous one.
Uh-huh.
There's no end punctuation anywhere in
Right,
this poem.
right.
And in the previous one, it ends with, in the final stanza, she's posing questions. But rather than using a question mark, she ends those sentences with exclamation points.
Yeah,
And here she doesn't end any of the sentences with any conclusive punctuation. It's like everything is held open for speculation.
yeah, absolutely. It's reaching forward. It has not concluded. Yeah, absolutely. Good point. And that's one important way that the dashes work. They're reaching forward. Leslie?
Well, my reaction to this poem, I feel really close to it in a way because it seems to me from the beginning she's not only talking about religion here, I think, but of a general awareness of being very, very different from other people from an early stage in her life. It reminds me, and it's interesting to me that she sees herself as a prince thrown out of her dominion. So she's not different in a way that is less or subservient. She is better than. She's a step above
It's regal.
other people. And it reminds me a little bit, I think it's Frank O'Connor's story, The Duke's Children, where the kids feel that they were switched at the hospital at birth sort of type thing, where they got stuck in the wrong family. And
Yeah.
I'm remembering when I was little having a moment in which I was sure that I had come from another planet and my family didn't want to tell me because it would hurt my feelings.
That's hysterical.
And she's grown older, but she's still at odds,
Yeah.
still looking for those palaces where she should be recognized by the world, but she is not going to fit in, and the suspicion makes her think that the problem might be in the way she's looking. She's looking oppositely. You know, everybody else is looking the other direction, and um, she's sort of still cast out of Eden.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder.
Absolutely. Emily Dickinson knew she was a great poet. You know, she knew she was a great poet. And we'll get to the poem "Dare You See a Soul at the White Heat" later. And I think you're absolutely right. It's like she's not saying, "Oh, poor me, I need to fit in with everybody else." She is saying, I feel different. I feel cast out. But there's a tremendous amount of courage and strength, and I think, pride in her poetry.
This
Yeah,
kind of pre foretells a hermetic life, doesn't it? She's more comfortable
yeah,
by
Yeah.
herself than among her supposed peers that she feels cast out from.
yeah. Although, she did have really close friends. She had she was part of a social circle, but yeah, there is still that sense of, difference and isolation. Yeah. Meredith has her hand up.
I was reminded very much to the way I felt when I was a girl in school. My grandmother died when I was 7, and it occurred to me suddenly that my parents were going to die too. I
Hmm.
mean, at some point, I was going to lose the framework within which I lived, and that would be. I wondered how that dominion going away would leave me. What,
Hmm.
so it's a feeling of bereft. Yes, bereft. I was.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I love this. It's one of my favorites. I just think it's such a touching poem. Um, it's not confessional, but it brings us close to her. It brings us close to her feelings about what it was like to be her. Actually, you know what? In honor of the season here in Mississippi, I want to go all the way down and look at a poem that's a hard one, but I think it's so cool. It's "Further in Summer Than the Birds." And it's in the second set. It's way sort of toward the end. Yeah, we can zoom way down. And it's a riddle kind of, and I'm going to read it and ask you what you think it's about. Because the whole first billion times I read it, I'm like, what the hell? What is this about? There we go. Okay.
Hmm.
It's a late poem. Further in summer than the birds, pathetic from the grass, a minor nation celebrates its unobtrusive mass. No ordinance be seen, so gradual the grace. A pensive custom it becomes, enlarging loneliness. Antiquest felt at noon, when August burning low arise this spectral canticle, repose to typify, remit as yet no grace, no furrow on the glow, yet a druidic difference enhances nature now. The first times I read this poem, I'm like, what the hoo is she talking about? Any takers?
Crickets.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
crickets. Yes,
And
yes.
she wrote a letter to Mabel Todd Loomis, which she never sent, but there was an actual cricket in the letter. So that
Yeah,
gets away.
Absolutely brilliant. It took me like a really long time to figure this out. So think about the season right now, at least where we are, which is where summer is starting to turn into autumn. You know, for her in New England, it would be August. For us, it's more like September/October. Further in summer than the birds, right? Further along in the changes of the seasons. Pathetic, pathetic means, evoking pity. These little squeakers, pathetic from the grass. Oink, 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 oink. A minor nation. I love this poem. Celebrates its unobtrusive mass. So what? Some kind of, holy services, divine services, constituted of the singing of crickets. For us here, it's more like cicadas at night, but I've grown to love that song. And when I'm not in the South, I'm like, where's the bugs? Where's the music at night, No ordinance be seen so gradual the grace. A pensive custom it becomes, enlarging loneliness. So, as autumn starts to settle in, I don't know about you, but I always feel a sense of melancholy awakening in me, just gradually awakening in me. And it's not a bad feeling, it's a sweet feeling, but it's a kind of loneliness. Rilke wrote a beautiful poem that starts out, whoever has no home now will never have one. And it's called Autumn Day, you know? So you walk out into existence feeling your loneliness. Antiquist felt at noon. Antiquist, what, most ancient? I read that for many years as anti-quest. Like, what's an anti-quest, But Antiquist felt at noon when August burning low arise this spectral canticle, this church song, this music to typify repose, but she doesn't say to typify repose. She turns it around. She makes you stop. She makes you struggle through this poem. Repose to typify. Somehow this music typifies repose. Remit as yet no grace. It's not yet time to pay back the grace, the furrow on the glow that is summer has not vanished. Yet a druidic difference enhances nature now. So what would a druidic difference be? Well, I can't answer, but I think of like, a sense of the holiness of nature,
Yeah.
a sense of the divinity of nature. She's been talking about mass and grace, and she means grace and canticle in a religious sense, you know?
Yeah, the whole poem is full of religious words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, who else ever thought of writing a poem about the crickets? You know, this is part of what's so amazingly original and wonderful, I think, about her. She sees things, she writes about things that are like all around us. A bird came down the walk, or, it sifts from leaden sieves, which is a poem about snow. This trippy poem about snow, as if it's being sifted from some great sieve in the sky, settling over everything, Or there are poems about spider webs. And then this beautiful poem about like these little tiny, tiny creatures singing in unison way down in the grass. And I think of Whitman's lines in Song of Myself about the creatures down, beneath the fences, the ants in those little wells down in the grass. So these great, great poets seeing the most imperceptibly tiny, quote, insignificant creatures that make up part of life, make up part of the living world, you know?
To me, this goes back to this whole thing of her hermetic life and the fact that she's focused on such a narrow scope of the world, but her whole emotion and intellectual being is infused into these very minute pieces of nature and the world that she's looking at. And so it's almost like sensory deprivation because her focus is so tight and narrow. It brings all this heavy duty emotion into these small things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we should all start paying attention, you know? No,
Um,
You know,
Peter?
Yeah, could I say one thing about pathetic? It certainly suggests pitiable, but the original Greek word pathos just means emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she means more generally that it's evoking
It
emotion,
evokes
not
emotion.
only or mainly the emotion of
Yeah,
pity.
yeah, yeah. It's true. And it's evoking emotion in her. Yeah, it's true. We're almost out of time. Let's look at one more nature poem and we'll
I,
save.
I want to, I
Go ahead.
really have to speak to this poem.
Okay.
I, I love this poem. I never had
The-
any hint that it existed,
I know.
but sharing it together as this group right now makes me feel existentially so much less lonely
I
because it's been a primary ritual of my life to go out in August and listen for the first crickets, and then every night go out and hear how many more there are. And like around August 20th, they're in this massive chorus of seeking their mate and kind of sensing the end of their life. And now every night I go out and I listen to see if there are any more left chirping, and there still are. But in a very short period of time, there will be none.
yeah.
And it's so, so poignant to me. And I've done it for years. And I always thought that I was the only person who did that, who cared so much about those crickets. And I just feel much less lonely knowing that this poem exists and that we've talked about it.
That's
I
so
just
great.
love that.
And what you said made me realize, sure, they're going to freeze when winter comes. And yet, right now, as Whitman says, urge and urge and urge, always the procreant urge of the world. So these songs are like, urge and urge and urge, let's keep the cricket race going, And so we've got love and death right here again in this beautiful little poem about crickets. Yeah.
Alan,
Amazing.
where are you? Alan?
Boulder, Colorado.
Oh yeah, right. I knew
Yeah.
that.
Well, they're singing right now in the Western Mass.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool. It is a lovely little poem. Lovely little poem. I want to look at one more poem. Just it's another nature poem, and it's down here too. And it is there came a wind like a bugle.
I love it. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. You gotta scroll up a little bit.
Oh, up. Okay.
Yeah, I keep having more and more. I want to
I
do this
think
one.
you
I want
just
to do this
passed
one.
it along.
No,
I passed it.
but no, keep going, keep going.
And
Okay.
says,
It's this one. It's this.
oh yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this is another late poem. There came a wind like a bugle. It quivered through the grass, and a green chill upon the heat, so ominous did pass. We barred the windows and the doors, as from an emerald ghost. The doom's electric moccasin that very instant passed. On a strange mob of panting trees and fences fled away, and rivers where the houses ran, those look that lived that day. The bell within the steeple wild, the flying tidings told. How much can come and much can go, and yet abide the world. Katrina just had an anniversary, you know. And I think of that when I think of this poem about a storm. There came a wind like a bugle. So it's a kind of apocalyptic poem, right? Um, you know, let's see. On a strange mob of panting trees and fences fled away, and rivers where the houses ran, those look that lived that day. And you think about the recent floods down in Texas too, just the incredible quick damage and catastrophe that the natural world can cause. The bell within the steeple wild, the flying tidings told. How much can come and much can go, and yet abide the world. The world is still there at the end of it. It's a great poem about that kind of catastrophe.
Um, you want to opine on the Dooms electric moccasin?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a hard one. A moccasin can mean a snake. And it doesn't mean, and it sure doesn't mean a Native American shoe.
It's not an northern snake, though.
No, I know. I have no idea. I have no idea what it means. I spent a long time looking for moccasin on, dictionaries last night. The OED wouldn't let me in unless I bought a subscription or something. But I picked a bunch of them, and they're all like a soft leather shoe made by Native American, blah, blah, blah. And then finally somebody said it can also refer to a snake.
Water moccasin.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, a water moccasin, but how's she getting a water moccasin up there in Amherst, Massachusetts?
I think it's a shoe. I think it's a very odd and wonderful image, but she's seeing the lightning as if something is walking through the sky,
Could,
Mm.
is walking through the sky.
oh, that could be. That could be. And I love the
Oh,
emerald ghost, the green chill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a weird, weird, you know, almost like a sci-fi poem of this storm that arises so suddenly and just completely blows through. And it's so moving. Those look that lived that day. It's like, well, if you made it through, you saw it happen. And then at the end of it, there's this calm and the world is still there, you know. So we got let's get out of screen share. And then everybody can just talk a little bit if you want to. Next week we'll talk about the love poems and the poetry poems and anything else that you guys want to talk about. And I'll try to refrain from sending you 85 more poems to look at.
great. And thanks so much.
Or anybody have comments or just want to visit about anything?
I while we were looking at these, I was thinking about the mental process that I go through in philosophy and science, which is it's a different process, but it kind of leads to a similar place because what we do in philosophy and science is push our intellect as far as we can go to find the limit of what we can know. And then what she does is kind of start there,
Yeah. Yeah.
right where we have to leave. We just say, we can't go any further. This is what we know. And that's where she starts.
That's where she starts.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting observation. Yeah. Yeah.
One of my major life projects in composing was a hour-long piece called Amherst Requiem, which included 9 poems of Emily Dickinson, along with a Latin Requiem text sung by a chorus and a children's chorus, all for with large orchestra. I don't want to co-opt the discussion here, but a composer in setting a poem to music has to make decisions about some of these things. And you can subtly change the meaning of the poems by how you choose to set them. And also you live with the poems a long time and learn how ways of viewing them. I will post some information about the Requiem if anyone wants to listen to it. I
I would
heard a
love
fly
to.
buzz. I heard a fly buzz when I died was a particularly important piece because it's a poem directly about death, but I set it to a tune by Timothy Swan called Why Do We Mourn Departing Friends? It was the principal funeral hymn in the early 1800s, and it fits this poem perfectly. And that gave my setting another level of resonance. Anyway, I'll collect some of these things and give you a guide to them if you're interested and put them on my website.
Yeah, I would
I
really
really
look.
am
Thank you.
enjoying this
Thank you.
discussion.
That's very cool. Look at all the fans of Emily. She's just amazing, you know? Any other comments?
Just to respond to Brian, I have written a few songs. That's not my main thing, but when you write a line uh, with a certain melody, it has to fit with the melody. The melody and the line has to go together, and having a different melody with the same line conveys something different, and vice versa. So I'm assuming that that is somewhat the dynamic you're talking about when you're composing.
Yes. In the Requiem, there's a case where Emily Dickinson retells the story of Abraham and Isaac. And she's very upset at God in it. I used a tune from Stephen Foster. We are coming, Father Abraham, 300,000 more. And the tune is utterly trivial compared to the great anguish and anger that Emily Dickinson feels at that point. There's a great deal of irony in the piece. And so you have a way, as a composer, you have a way of casting other lights on a poem than simply what's in the words.
That's so cool.
Brian, is anyone performing the Requiem these
Alas,
days?
no. The
Oh,
premiere was in 2008. There are 80 copies out in the world. At least 4 are within walking distance of Emily's house. And I've had only nibbles.
Hmm.
well, we've heard it.
Yeah, I think it's a cool piece. And I had very positive reports out of the audience. And the orchestra wants to do it again. But basically, if you have the forces to do Amherst Requiem, then you could do Carmina Burana instead and get an audience to show up.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
I'm sure you've talked to Amherst College.
Oh, yes, yes, there's a copy there. There's a copy
Yeah.
in the museum. There's a copy at UMass Amherst. There's a local chorus, which is also looked at it. No nibbles.
That's so frustrating.
Well, at
That's
least I
so,
got to hear it. And
yeah.
my friends. Anyway,
if you
I'll
want a
post
lot of
lot of
performances, you've got to write for small groups,
Yeah, not
not
major orchestras,
not a cast of thousands, you know.
not major orchestras. That's true.
Well, yeah, it's
Brian, who recorded it? What chorus recorded it?
it was done at Stanford by the Stanford Symphonic Chorus, and we had a real Brunhilde singing the Emily Dickinson poems. They had to lean against the outside of the memorial church to prevent walls from falling outward. She was not as vulnerable as I wanted, but boy, was she a force of nature.
Miracle. I can't imagine Emily Dickinson as Brunhilde. That's
Brian,
so
can you, what's your website address?
BrianWHolmes.com. There's no posting of Amherst Requiem there yet. BrianWHolmes.com.
Thanks.
Any other comments? I know Douglas just went and got a copy of the Johnson edition, right?
Right.
Oh, you're gonna dive deep. That's great.
Are you going to send
Yeah,
us
it
those
looks
next
pretty good.
poems, Anne?
What did you say?
Are you going to send us those next poems?
I did.
Oh,
A
you
lot of
did.
words there.
You have them already.
Yeah, you've got them. The poems that remain to be talked about are the love poems.
So that's in the same thing, the same document?
It is.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Wild Nights.
it's like Wild Nights, Wild Nights. Yeah. And the crazy poems. One need not be a chamber to be haunted because I could not stop for death. That's okay. It was not death, for I stood up. I felt a funeral in my brain. There came a day at summer's full, come slowly, Eden, wild nights, and then the poetry poems, which are dare you see a soul at the white heat and to pile like thunder in its close. So those are sort of the remaining kind of loose categories that we haven't talked about. Yeah, good. Well, everybody, have a good week.
Bye.
Thank you, Anne.
Okay. See you
Thank you,
next
Ann.
week.
Yeah, for sure. Take
Thanks,
care.
Anne.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here.
Goodbye, all.